Hello and welcome back again. Back to again for another time. We are here.
Last time.
Yep. Back again since the last time. The very first time since the last time.
I'm so excited.
Dude, me too. Unfortunately, we could not meet our goal of sending another recording to Steve while he was already late into the throes of editing the last episode, which would have been very funny.
I would have laughed actually, but sadly he must have used his spy cameras to realize what we were up to.
Yeah. Because I thought it would be especially funny, that he was really, talking about, oh, I'm trying to get this done, trying to get this edited, and then just like for the only time ever, sending him another episode before he's finished editing one. Just, I feel like would have been pretty funny, but unfortunately, it just wasn't in the cards.
I have hope. It could happen still.
Yeah, it could happen again one day. But here we are for the second episode of what I have decided to dub season 2. The only thing is, I don't know how these seasons will necessarily work, though, right? Because, like, are we going to go into season 3 when we're done with this data pack, or is season 3 just going to be the whole cycle, or the next cycle? Like, how's that really going to work?
I think it's cycles. That's what makes sense in my brain.
Okay, well, tentatively it's going to be cycles, but we'll see how I feel about it when we're done with the data pack.
Perfect.
Well, anyway, speaking of
my
which,
chilies are already a tingle.
I don't understand a word that you just said.
It means I'm horny.
All right, well let's start with a card here then.
All right. You want me to get this one first?
Yeah, you get it first because I realized in the last episode I took 2 cards back to back, so I'm gonna make up for that by letting you have this first one.
Well, you're so gracious. First up this week, we have peacock. All right. Now, aside from being one of the funniest words in the English language, this one is a criminal icebreaker. It has the subtypes. Or it's a program with subtypes icebreaker and decoder. It is 3 credits to install, 1 memory, and has the abilities 2 credits, break codegate subroutine, and 2 credits plus 3 strength. It has 2 base strength and it is 2 influence. Wow, that's a lot of 2s. All right. Kika. Does this card even warrant a 2?
Probably not. No, because Peacock is not very good.
We've talked about numbers a lot and how numbers are important. How do you feel about 2 credits to break a codegate subroutine?
Is 2 credits to break a subroutine just like the immediate, just like death sentence for an icebreaker?
Yeah, it is. It's maybe not the only one, but it is way up there. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna encounter, I don't know. Let's see. This is 2 strength at base. You encounter a Victor 1.0. You have no clicks. You spend 2 credits to match its strength. You spend 4 credits to break its subroutines. Give me a freaking break. Y'all base that shit for 0. No, get out of here. Yes.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of an icebreaker because, like, if an icebreaker doesn't at least go 1 credit for 1, if not better, then it's almost just immediately never worth considering.
Yeah.
Because I mean, can you think of a good icebreaker that doesn't break for 1 or less?
I was trying to, but I think the closest I can come is battering ram, which breaks 2 for 2.
Yeah, battering ram's not good.
Not good. Not good, really. It's maybe the closest to good, but it's not.
Here, let me take a quick look here. Battering ram landed in our B tier. So I guess apparently at one point we thought it was okay. I guess I'll have to go back and listen to that episode because I don't know how that happened.
Maybe we were just young and foolish. And at the time, it wasn't the worst. Like, there were very limited options. And sure, there was legendary Corroder sitting there, but...
Battering ram certainly wasn't Morningstar by any means.
Yeah.
But anyway, point is that the closest I can think of is the conspiracy breakers that came out really late in Anarch. That some of them, uh, like all they, some of them broke in like a sort of a weird way that was sometimes inefficient. Um,
Yeah, Black Orchestra was what, 2 for 3 subroutines?
so, something like that. I guess even that though is still technically better than one for one, depending on the scenario.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's a minimum of 2, but you can come out ahead.
Yeah, but the point is, and I mean, we're going to talk about, especially this cycle. We're going to talk about a lot of pretty poor icebreakers, and Peacock is a really chief example of one of them. Just because spending 2 credits to break a subroutine is just really bad, and I don't think at any point in the game was ever good or worth considering.
No. No.
Because two for 3 strength is fine, possibly
Okay.
good even.
Maybe in some circumstances. It still kind of sucks if you run into a 3 strength ice. But all right, let's put it this way: Peacock was the first criminal code gate breaker. We talked about this briefly while covering the core set. Criminals just didn't get anything to break code gates with out of the box.
True. Yep.
And this came out, and they still had no code gate breaker.
Yeah, that's a good point. So to kind of spotlight how bad and inefficient Peacock is, and really just undesirable Peacock is criminals literally had no other choice, but they still didn't choose it.
Yeah,
this was all they had. It was like, okay, here's your code gate breaker, here's your decoder, and collectively, criminal players said, "Nah, I'm good."
There's really no bigger condemnation than that. Just people wouldn't play it. And it wasn't even fun or cool or interesting, or you're trying to do some weird Timmy stuff with it. There was nothing.
Yeah, the most use that I ever got out of Peacocks was I had made a few draft cubes, and Peacock would be the like default code gate breaker that everybody just got a free copy of, so that everybody like had a code gate breaker available to them, right, whether they drafted one or not. But
where the point is kind of to get everybody something so bad that they have to be really tempted to get anything else.
Yes. So yeah, that was the most use that I ever got out of Peacock was in draft cubes that I never even got to use very much.
I don't really have much more to say about this card.
Yeah. So as far as what we would change about it, I mean, I think I've really already kind of spoiled that discussion, and that it needs to just be 1 for 1 on the code gate subroutines.
Yeah.
Because even then, like, it's decent, but I don't think that it's like, it's still not awesome even at that point. Because the 2 for 3 is, just kind of a little.
2 for 3 is like, I don't really want this, but if the things that surround it are good enough, maybe I'll deal with it.
Yeah, and you'll at least run into situations where the 2 for 3 can be good. Obviously few and far between. But you come up against a toll booth. That 2 for 3, looking pretty nice.
Yeah.
Or I guess 3 for 2 rather. I keep saying that wrong. It's 3 for 2.
We got you. We got what you meant.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, I think if you just make it to where it breaks 1 for 1 on the subroutine, then it becomes serviceable.
And that's about it. Just serviceable.
Which is really all you need it to be, right? If this is just going to be hey, let's get the criminals an in-house, decoder so that they have one.
Sure, that's fair.
All it needs to be is serviceable. Like, the problem is that Peacock is just bad. It's like, hey, here's this. By the way, it's bad.
Yeah, that's reasonable. But nope, Peacock didn't have that.
Yeah, people would rather just influence in, anything else. I think in this same cycle, we got another code gate breaker out of Shaper that I think was often just chosen to influence that instead.
Yeah, or just Yogg.
Yeah, or just Yogg, because obviously, you're running Andy Sucker, then you're just going to be running Yogg anyway. So why does this even need to exist?
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, not be a piece of garbage, and run a criminal archetype that wasn't anti-sucker, then there were other decoder options, even that came soon after this. So
Yes. So, can we rate it?
oh yeah, talk about the flavor first, which is
I guess.
kind of whatever.
You want to read it?
Yeah, the flavor text is show off.
Nothing about this card is show off. Not even the art.
Yeah, the art's just kind of weird. It's like it doesn't. Every time I see it, it doesn't even register to me as anything relating to a peacock. It just looks like some sort of like weird, like
something you'd see in a modern New York art house. Not like a good one, but like it's a rundown one in a bad part of Brooklyn that has a board over one of the windows.
It looks like the first stage of Spore.
It
That's what this art looks like.
does. You're right about that.
So
there's an eye floating in some stuff and maybe some tentacles.
And one day it'll grow into a pee-pee monster. That's what you make in Spore.
Now,
I forgot.
Deliberately, only deliberately.
All right, but now we can rate Peacock, I think.
Yep, 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1. I almost thought about going 0, but I think 0 would be kind of like it's not that egregious. It's just kind of shitty.
Yeah, it's just bad and boring, which is plenty of condemnation.
Yeah, and I can't blame Peacock too much because one of the things about Peacock is it probably doesn't even want to exist. It just needed to exist, right? It just exists out of necessity that, oh crap, that's right, we didn't put a decoder in Criminal, did we? All right, here's this.
And like its badness at least feels deliberate. I don't get why they bothered, but fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, this seemed like one of those things where somebody on the design team was like, well, if Criminal gets a decent decoder, then that'll put them over the edge. They'll simply be too strong at that point.
Simply too strong because Yogg is so influence expensive that there's just no way that they could do anything to circumvent this lack of a decoder.
Yeah, that if Criminals had access to that 2 influence, it would simply all be over. But anyway, yeah, that's enough of Peacock.
All right, what do we got next?
Next we got. Oh, I literally didn't know that this was the next card. I actually thought that this was in a different pack. So anyway, you may have heard me talking about a different decoder that was coming up soon, and apparently very, very soon. And that is Zoo.13 Keymaster. It is, and you're going to hear me say this number a lot, a 1 to install program that takes up 1 MU. It is a program, and it is an Icebreaker Decoder Cloud. And it has 1 base strength. It reads, if you have at least 2 link, the memory cost of Zoo.13 Keymaster is 0, even if it is not installed. 1 credit, break code gate subroutine. 1 credit, +1 strength. And it is 2 influence out of the Shaper faction. So, Isaac, why did people always call this card Zool, but they never called Yogg Yogo? That always made me mad.
Because Zool is more fun to say than Zoo.13, and Yogg is more fun to say than Yogo. That's all. It's not that complicated.
Okay, fair. Well, second question. Why if you were gonna just need to throw in, just kind of a pinch decoder that you weren't going to have like a data sucker support for, did you just choose this instead of Peacock?
1 to install is nice. This is gonna get you past gear check stuff super easily. It's got decent numbers, like 1 strength is not good, but 1 plus 1 for 1 strength, 1 for 1 subroutines. We just got done talking about 1 for 1 subroutines is good. It's only 2 influence, it's not that expensive. This is just a good gap filler.
Yeah, it's actually kind of insane thinking about that, like when you're, thumbing through the pack for the first time, you see Peacock and you're like, oh, okay. And then this is the immediate next card from
Right.
Peacock.
It
Um,
costs less to install.
mm,
It got one less strength, but that's never gonna like. I think there is nothing, not one card that Peacock breaks for cheaper than ZU.13. I don't think there's a single one. And this is cheaper to install. Like, what do you want?
yeah, it kind of immediately sort of, it's just an immediate highlight of like how important the one to break one subroutine is. Just because immediately you see this and you can just immediately almost tell that it's better because
Yeah,
it's like, okay, yeah, I can throw this down for cheap. It's going to be expensive to get through some things, that's for sure. But I can throw it down cheap, possibly free if I'm, for some reason I'm running this out of Kate.
yeah,
And like it just gets the job, quick and easy. Um, and yeah, I guess that's really all there is to say about it. Is just that like Zoo 13, whatever you want to call it, is just kind of good in all the ways that Peacock is not.
yep. It's got good numbers.
Yeah, it's got good numbers. I'll tell you
Yes,
though,
it's a
this card,
dog.
it is a dog. Well, we'll get to that here in a little bit when we talk about the flavor. But it is a dog. Um, no, but one thing I was gonna say is I actually never really ran this card, even though I saw this card run a lot. For some reason, I was always just sort of weird about my decoders, and
Hmm.
I just never wanted to run this. Like I always, with decoders specifically, would always choose to run sort of the weirder ones. Obviously, not Peacock, but like with when most Shaper decks would like be run packing this, I would always be choosing to run like Cyber Cipher.
Okay, yeah.
Which I always felt was just objectively the way to go. I feel like I had some sort of secret sauce with that like everybody would run Zoo 13 out of their shapers if they were kind of if they weren't going for the Gordian blade, just make a shit ton of money kind of thing. Like if they were just
Right.
needing like a quick and easy decoder, like they would always run Zoo 13. But I was always like, dude, run Cyber Cipher. Cyber Cipher is the way to go. But I feel like everybody like just collectively decided that Zoo 13 was better than Cyber Cipher, even though I think Cyber Cipher was 100 times better than Zoo 13.
Here's the thing with that. You need multiple cyber ciphers unless you're like you and are running a bunch of scavenges and test runs, which not everybody did. Let's be realistic here.
I guess that's fair. I guess I did kind of run some weird reinstall sort of shenanigans. But even like getting two Cyber Ciphers on the field wasn't crazy. Like they only cost 2 to install and they're only 1 MU. And if you're in Shaper, you probably got extra MU somewhere.
Yeah, like it's a doable thing, but you need like cyber cipher has to be in the right deck. And if your twos are self-modifying codes and clone chips for more self-modifying codes, and that's your thing, then Cyber Cipher doesn't fit super well with all of that.
Yeah, that's fair. But anyway, Zoo 13 though, popular kind of I mean, honestly, I guess I just kind of got done saying that I feel like it was overrated, but almost sort of underrated, and that what a very seldom celebrated icebreaker that I really saw a lot of that I wouldn't have kind of thought was that popular because it's just kind of like, oh yeah, Zoo 13 is pretty good, but I saw a lot of this guy.
Yeah, yeah, because it was cheap and reasonably effective and made sense for what a lot of people were doing. And that's it.
Yeah, kind of an unsung hero, weirdly, that um I can't even know that I don't know that I could think of another card that I was like inversely proportional to how much I saw of it to how little anyone really seemed to actually care about it.
Yeah,
It's almost the perfect card in that regard, in that you know it's there to help anybody out that needs it, but nobody on Earth is annoyed by it because it's just completely inoffensive. It just does its job and it does it cheap and effective.
doesn't complain.
So maybe I should have run. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I should have run old Zoo here more often than I did, and maybe I would have kind of come to that appreciation sooner.
Maybe. I don't know. I only put this card in a few decks. I don't know. Most of the time I just programs are my favorite cards, much like ice are your favorite cards.
Sure.
And this is a program which, although it does a job and it does it effectively, didn't get my Jimmies excited.
I mean, how could it really though, right?
Yeah.
It's a dog with some keys that unlocks some stuff for you.
Sure, that's not his job, but I mean, still.
um, one thing that I think was a weirdly talked about thing with Cloud Breakers, this being the first of the Cloud Breakers as a concept, was everybody seemed very collectively confused by the wording on its memory cost is 0 even if it is not installed. I saw for years people talking about when is that going to matter? When is that going to be a thing? Like, da da da. And, as far as most people were concerned, it never did. It never was a clarification that ever mattered.
Right.
However, I always maintained that it was a clarification that did matter and always mattered. Because Zoo 13 has a 1 MU cost when it's in your hand. And I believe that the rules are specific in that a card's effects don't go into play until they're installed. And so, if it weren't for the even if it is not installed place, technically speaking, even if you had 2 Link and no MU, you couldn't install it because its effect isn't active until you do install it, which you wouldn't have the MU to do.
Sure. And I think you're right in that it short-circuited that debate from ever happening. And so it's worthy text in that regard. Where there was never a question, nobody ever got in a fight about that. It was obvious.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I point that out is because I saw debates for years about why that mattered and when it was ever gonna matter. And I always felt like nobody ever understood that that was the purpose of, that clause existing. Because everybody was always waiting for when is something going to come into play that, makes the even if it is not installed text actually do something. And it always seemed like, nobody ever stopped to think about
it. I hadn't really thought about it, but I think you raise a solid point.
Anyway, let's talk about the flavor on this guy. Dog with keys.
Dog with keys.
I think we finally found the answer to the age-old question of what the dog doing.
The dog getting them keys.
He's opening the door with the key.
The ones for the gate.
You want to read the flavor text?
Sure. He always uses the same key.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
However,
even though he's got 2 keys.
I was going to say, however, he does definitely have 2 keys, possibly 3 keys.
You know what? I never looked at that, but yeah, no, I think you're right. I think he's got 3 keys.
Yeah, so I don't know. Which is it? Which is it, Fantasy Flight?
Which is the key that he used? The fans want to know.
Which is it, Lucas? I know you're listening.
Lucas doesn't know.
That's fair. But anyway, I like the art. I've always liked this art. I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I like the whole Creature of Cyberlight theme that exists in some art. I think it looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
I like this. I like Pawn. I like most of the Kaisa cards. It's a good effect.
Yeah, I mean, you honestly can't go wrong with a thing made of Cyberlight.
True.
Anyway, would you change anything about old Zoo? I wouldn't. I think he's fine.
No, I don't think so. I think he does what he's supposed to do.
Actually,
good gap.
I think it's weird that, and I actually even misremembered. I thought he only costed 1 influence, and I think it's kind of weird that he doesn't cost 1 influence.
You just want him to have more ones. That's all you care about.
I mean, am I wrong though?
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong.
like, really the influence should just also be 1, because then it can just be that it's just a perfect series of 1s.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I don't hate that it's 2. I think oftentimes we got too fast and loose with 1 influence cards. And this is one that would be really tempting to import places and frankly screw the criminals.
That's fair. All right, well, what do we rate old Zoo.13 Keymaster?
Zoo.13 Keymaster is going to get a 3 from me, which might sound harsh, but it's kind of what I was talking about. This card doesn't like it. It's good. It's reasonable. It's well balanced. It does its job. I don't know. It just doesn't do something for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I thought it would be funny to do a bit if it was like, well, since it's got 1 MU, 1 cost, 1 strength, 1 to break, I'm gonna give it a 1. I felt like that would be kind of a funny bit to do, but
We all know it wouldn't be true.
no. I do think that 3 is a good spot for it though, because it's just decent, just nice
Yeah.
and solid, there when you need it.
Yep.
Well, moving on.
Moving on. All right. Next up, we have the Helpful AI. This is a Shaper resource. It has the subtypes Connection, Link, and Virtual. It costs 2 credits to install. It is unique, and it has the following abilities: +1 Link, and Trash. Choose an Icebreaker. That Icebreaker has +2 Strength until the end of the turn, and it is 2 Influence. All right. Aaron, we've talked a little bit about Link and Traces and how it's weird and kind of dumb. Did the Helpful AI, like, it's got the second ability? Is that enough to how do how do you see these abilities interacting? Because it's a little bit, it feels to me like they're very disparate. Like you're taking different bits of things and stitching them together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Helpful AI has always been a kind of weird card to me, because it is one of those classic cards that seems like almost good. Like it's just enough for you to kind of stop and consider it, but then you kind of move on pretty quickly when you're like, that's not worth the deck slot. And it's sort of almost, it sort of has a weird anti synergy if you consider it with the Cloud Breakers, the card we just talked about, Zoo.13 being the first of the Cloud type breakers, that don't take up MU once you, are meeting a link threshold. It has a sort of weird anti synergy with that, right? And let's say in a situation where you're running Kate and you're running the Helpful AI, and you're, I don't know, running a whole bunch of other shit, I guess, that's going to cost MU that isn't your icebreakers.
Yeah.
If you choose to say trash this, right, to boost an icebreaker, then you're going to unmeet that link requirement, right? And
Right.
so it kind of has anti synergy with the Cloud Breakers, which, being that it's in the same pack as the first Cloud Breaker, that they printed,
Sure.
seems like that was kind of the purpose of it, right? Was to be an enabler of, the Cloud ability. But then if
Yeah.
it trashes itself and removes that link, so that doesn't really work.
Yeah. I don't know. It's maybe they were thinking something with like you're gonna have many link cards, so this is one that's just giving you some extra stuff. But I don't know, man.
Well,
It feels like I would just much rather put a personal touch in here. That's what it feels like.
yeah. I think in most scenarios, the personal touch is going to be better than this card. Um, and the personal touch is already not very good.
Yeah, it's no spring chicken, and it's getting picked over this.
Yeah. Now the only thing that the one thing that you could say though, that the Helpful AI has a little bit of a leg up over the personal touch in that this is a little more flexible.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a trash ability, so you can use it mid run.
You just choose an icebreaker, so you can have it on the table, right, and bank it for later. You're essentially paying 2 credits to bank a +2 strength buff for later.
Right.
Which is not the worst thing ever. The thing about the personal touch, right, is that's a commitment, right? One, you're only getting +1 strength out of it, which 2 strength is obviously better. But the personal touch gets hosted on an icebreaker, and so it's tied specifically to that icebreaker, and doesn't matter if you change your mind, when you run into an Ichi, that personal touch is on your your Yogg, if you're running some crazy shit.
Yeah.
While the helpful AI, is more flexible in that if you need it, if you do need it, and you run into something, you can pop this and boom, your mimic will be strength 5 for however many ice it needs to break for the turn. It is worth pointing out that it is for the whole turn, which is, eh.
Right. So, I mean, you can get multiple runs off of this. Okay, so let me ask you something. This has obvious synergy with Vix Breakers. It lasts for the whole turn. Would this have been better as an Anarch card? Because think about it, like you pop it for medium digging all turn long, where your Yogg is now breaking those Victor 2s for nothing and getting past that toll booth and whatnot, and you just medium dig some poor fellow.
I could see that. The problem though is that, like, say you do paint this red, because here's the thing, right? Is if an Anarch deck really did want this, for that purpose, like 2 influence, while not great, isn't like insurmountable. So I almost feel that even if this was red, like they still wouldn't use it.
Yeah.
Because you have data suckers. You have data suckers, you have Ice Carver, like
right, that are self-replenishing, you've got better options. You're right.
It's just in a weird spot where it's almost most useful as like a compromised employee enabler, which is already not great, and that card didn't become good until like Sunny existed.
Right. And again, like the aforementioned problem of its link that patches itself.
Yes. And so I was kind of where my train of thought was going with that was that it enables your compromised employee. You can enable that drip econ for however long you need it. And then if you really need a big turn, you can buff one of your icebreakers. It'll disable your compromised, but, then you're saving however much money on your, whatever breaker you choose to buff. But
right.
These are all theoretical scenarios that are niche, stupid, and would be better handled by just running better things.
Yes. So, in other words, everything this card does is better handled by something else.
Yes. I do want to say that I think, didn't this get put in like some sort of deck at some point?
I think it may be wound up in like the Ian's crazy drunk discount party deck, whatever.
Ian's Playhouse.
Whatever that deck was called. It had a college/orgy vibes, whatever it was.
Well, wait, did it even? Because it's a connection, but wasn't it like non-virtual connections, or am I crazy?
Maybe it was.
Yeah,
so maybe it wasn't even that. Data Dealer outdid this card. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess it's a virtual resource, so I guess Apex could use it if it needed to.
Yeah, if Apex cared, because that's the problem with Endless Hunger. Was that his breaker?
Yeah.
Or its breaker is that it just doesn't have enough strength.
Yeah, if there's one breaker that needs that +2 strength, it's Endless Hunger.
Sheesh.
Anyway, would you change anything about Helpful AI? I guess what could you change it? I guess you would. You definitely would because it sucks.
Yeah.
What would you change it to make it not suck?
I don't know. Maybe power counters instead of trashing it.
Okay. Didn't we kind of already get a card like that though? Isn't that what that one of those? Wasn't there a card in Creation and Control that was basically that?
If so, I'm not remembering it off the top of my head.
Actually, it might have been one that got power counters, and the power counters were credits to use for programs. That might be off base here.
That
Uh,
sounds more familiar. I'm not sure.
so when you say power counters, you think, just maybe you like how would the power counters refresh though? Would they refresh, or would you just get like four of
I,
them maybe, and
I
then you
mean,
can
I'd
just
be
use them?
fine with them not refreshing, where it's just, yeah, you get like three, two, three, maybe four power counters, however many. And that way, this card has some legitimate economy uses, but is also giving you a link. And so, there's some utility there. And
Yeah,
you don't feel bad at like you're just throwing usefulness away by using its other ability.
yeah. I think maybe if it was, just had three power counters, you can spend, one power counter to give +1 strength until the end of the turn, um, and then it didn't trash itself. I think that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't think it would be broken either. I think that would
No,
just
I
be
think it's
that would just be
reasonable.
pretty good. All right, I'm gonna read the flavor text on this guy now.
Do it.
What causes an artificial intelligence to turn on its master? Is it because its directives have been altered by some external source? Or, by giving them agency to adapt, have we fated them to revolt? Emilio Harris, Creators and the Created.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate that's kind of wasted on such a
Mid
kind of
card.
a mid card, yeah.
I know this card isn't mid. This card's bad.
Yeah, on a bad card. And the problem too is that I do think the art is like decent, and I like the idea of it too. Like everything flavor wise, I actually think is pretty cool about this card. Like, if you came across an AI, right, that's directive was like to be helpful, to people, but like what if what you needed help with was, fucking up the corp shit.
Right. And yeah, I'm going to be helpful.
Yeah, so like I've always liked the helpful AI as like a concept and like flavor wise as a card, and have always been pretty disappointed that like the card in question that it's sort of the concept is tied to just kind of sucks.
Yeah, agreed.
So good flavor on a bad card.
How do you feel about the art?
It's decent. Like I feel like it's not like great art maybe objectively, but it does have a uniqueness to it, and like I would never mistake this for anything else. Like you could show this to me, outside of the card context at any point, and I would always be like, "Oh, it's the helpful AI art."
Yeah, true.
So,
I have a little bit of trouble figuring out. Like, it took me the longest time to figure out that he was wearing a scarf. Because it
yeah,
just looks weird.
I guess I maybe wasn't always completely cognizant of the fact that he had a scarf on, but I guess it's not a stunning revelation to me. It's like, oh yeah, okay, that's a scarf. I guess maybe before I maybe saw it as like a weird ascot or something,
Wow, what a hipster.
possibly. Anyway, what do we rate the helpful AI?
Helpful AI gets another one. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's like it's not offensive. There are things I like about it conceptually, but it's just badly put together, I think.
yeah, it's a series of interesting to good concepts, ranging from function to flavor, but all sort of shoved together in a very bad amalgamation.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think one is really what it has been fated to.
Well, what do we have next?
Well, next, I read this one, right? You read Helpful AI.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, next we have Plascrete Carapace, which is a 3 to install hardware with the gear subtype, which does read: place 4 power counters on Plascrete Carapace when it is installed. When there are no power counters left on Plascrete Carapace, trash it. Posted power counter, prevent 1 meat damage. And it is 0 influence, and it is a neutral card for the runners. Isaac,
Yeah.
why was this arguably the very first of very many in the line of silver bullet balance cards?
And we talked about this idea a little bit, if memory serves, when we went over Scorched Earth. But Scorched Earth is a binary state. You are either not playing it or you are killing the runner, basically. And the problem with that binary state is that in the core set, if you made a run and Wayland had their pieces and X amount more money than you, you just died. That was it. And that creates a problem in gameplay where the runner can suddenly no longer make a reasonable decision. If they're going to run, they have to win the game that turn, which isn't something that's necessarily in their control. Because the Corp can just score out low pointers that are not going to be enough for you and force it out. Like, it is a problem game design wise. Plasticrete Carapace was their way around that to say, oh, well, we didn't put enough foresight on all of this, so we're going to give you access to a card which just shuts off that win condition.
Yeah, you could almost argue that, via that in certain circumstances, the game was a little bit solved with the win condition of the kind of Scorch Sea Source combo, and that you could kind of put that deck together, and you just had a decent chance of just being able to win via the runner, not being able to beat you before you had
totally.
your stuff.
And sure, there was still, you had to get your combo pieces, you had to get the money to run the whole thing, but you're absolutely correct that you could just get to a state where the runner was locked out.
Right. And so obviously kind of, got to do something about that. My only question, and I guess not only question, but my big question, right, is was Plasticrete Carapace the best way of going about that? And did it maybe perhaps set an unhealthy precedent for the solution of other game problems later on down the line?
It just feels like a stopgap measure when they weren't sure exactly what to do about it. And one, I don't understand how exactly that came to be when this seems like a fairly obvious problem. But to answer the first part of your question, yeah, there were definitely better ways to handle that. And we saw that in other cards. Give you one example. I think, Crash Space is a better solution than this. It's more elegant. Because, yes, it can be trashed, but the runner has to be tagged for that to happen, and it naturally helps the runner shake those tags, so it's more difficult to tag the runner, one, and even if you tag them, if you see Scorch, that's not enough because it's going to block some of that damage. So one, I think that's an example, and you basically never saw Crash Space used because Plasticrete existed, and Plasticrete is hardware, you can't trash hardware. And then later on, we saw another, I think, better implementation with I've Had Worse, which isn't a guaranteed card to save your life, particularly against Boom, but is still a useful card in defending you from meat damage death.
Well, Boom is sort of funny in that it seems like it was a silver bullet to Plasticrete.
Yes, a little bit.
Because...
And to I've Had Worse to some extent.
Yeah, true. But it almost seems like it was a bit of a leapfrog where it was like, Scorch Kill's too strong, Plasticrete too strong, Boom, Boom kill,
right?
A Boom hard hitting news, and then I think one of the things, I don't know how much we have or haven't touched on this at this point. It's been a couple years. I don't remember everything that we have or haven't talked about, honestly. Is I think that a big problem with the silver bullet balance method is that, or at least what caused it, was Fantasy Flight's at least initial insistence on not having any sort of ban or restricted list.
Right, and they stuck to that for a long time, and I understand
very long time.
Why? But boy, did it bite them at times.
Yeah, they stuck with that decision or that line of thinking for an extremely long time, much to the detriment of the game, in my opinion.
Agreed. And I'm gonna sound mean. Lucas, I don't mean to be mean, but they were basically writing checks that they couldn't cash. Where they're saying, all right, we're not going to have a ban list, we're not going to have a restricted list, but then with the cards that they released, they lacked the foresight to actually be able to deliver on that kind of a promise effectively.
Right. Well, and the problem too is that it's, I mean, it's arrogant, right? To
Yeah,
say that,
we're not going to make mistakes.
yeah, we're gonna balance this shit perfectly, and there's never gonna be a restricted or ban list. We're just gonna put it all on our shoulders to just completely balance everything. The game will be completely future proof, and it very much was not. In many different ways and at many different points. And I appreciate the sentiment, though, right?
Yeah.
Because I think Lucas is went on record in interviews saying that if you have like a restricted or a ban list or whatever, then you're kind of breaking a sort of implicit contract with the people that that buy your products, by saying, hey, I've sold you this card, but now you can't use it.
Right.
So I appreciate the sentiment there, but however, you've got to understand as well, though, that there's going to be a difference in casual tabletop play at home and
Right.
competitive tournament play.
Yeah.
And the tournament ban and restricted list isn't gonna affect anybody that isn't in that scene. And if Joe Schmo is just playing with his buddies, it doesn't matter if you've banned or restricted, Scorched or whatever. He's not going to read it. He doesn't care if he's not playing in tournaments.
Yeah, totally. Can I go on a minor tangent here? I think there's a better way to do this, which doesn't violate Lucas's precious implicit agreement, which
Sure.
is you just balance cards internally to the cycle. If tournament rules were you can use the core set, you can use one cycle and one big data box. Then you don't have to balance it against every card you ever are going to release forever, which you don't have the foresight to be able to consider. All you have to do is balance it against, what, 200 cards? Not even 200 cards.
Yeah, I guess that's another. That's a really fair point to bring up, actually. It wasn't even just that the banned and restricted. It's that one thing that they were, too little, too late on as well was card rotation.
Yeah, for sure.
Card rotation came, way too late.
Except they shouldn't have rotated noise, but yes.
um, sets should have been rotating far sooner than they were. And even when they did, and even when the single rotation that the game lived to see happened, I think the card pool was still too big.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It got to be so combo-y towards the end of its lifespan, and that's a result of a huge card pool, where you're not going to be able to foresee everything that lonely nerds are going to dream up in their basement at 3 a.m.
Yeah. It's simply foolish to think that, you're going to be able to, plan out everything to where some, in a more effective way than, some grognard is going to be able to, determine what words on this card cause havoc when met with the words on this other
your
card.
job, but they will no life this game for all hours of the day. They are going to just put more brain power into it than you are.
Yeah, they're going to figure it out. But to loop this back around to Plascrete,
yes, thank you.
Is that Plascrete is the first example of just putting out silver bullet balance cards in the interest of never quote unquote rotating or banning or restricting cards. And so get used to seeing cards like Plascrete because there's going to be a lot of them.
Oh boy, will there.
Some of them good, some of them bad. Plascrete, though, one of the good ones. To kind of cut to the chase, this became a staple of decks. Though I did have a weird aversion to this. I tried as best as I could to never really run Plascrete just because I...
Yeah, same. It's like on principle. It's like everybody would tell you, like the common knowledge, the accepted theory was that you gotta run Plascrete, and so it's like, oh, I don't want to run Plascrete. Hell with you.
Yeah, so I think I definitely did run it in, at least a few decks that I took to tournaments, but if there was ever an opportunity to run something, that wasn't Plascrete, that's, still offered, some kind of way to not die to kill decks, I would always try to make that work instead, usually.
Yeah, which I respect, probably because I did similar things. One of the ways I help myself sleep at night for running account Siphon Recursion Anarch is that I did it without Plascrete most of the time.
At least have some dignity. I may be a degenerate Count Siphon Recursion Anarch player, but at least I'm not wearing a Plascrete.
Right, I'm gonna float 20 tags. I'm not gonna install Plascrete, and you know what? If you manage to kill me, good on you.
You know what? Gotta at least respect that. So, and you had mentioned that Crash Face was kind of a better, more nuanced balancing aspect to this. Do you? But nobody ever really played Crash Face, right? Because this came out very quickly after. Do you think that if Crash Face had just been made a neutral card, that would not have necessitated the printing of Plascrete?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean that's very possible.
Because I think one of the things about Plascrete and why it's kind of so important is because it's a neutral, no influence card, right?
You can afford it, and you're not wasting influence on something if you happen to be going up against HB.
Right. So,
I mean, so on the one hand, there's that. On kind of another end of the spectrum, like with I've Had Worse, is even if you're not up against a damaging deck, you're not sorry to see it. It's still useful.
yeah. But yeah, because that's the problem. Because Crash Base is 2 influence, I think, is the big problem. Being that it's in criminal and it's 2 influence. So the kind of one anti-scorch tech that there really is in the core set, basically only criminal can afford.
Yeah.
So, I do think that Plascrete is an unfortunate sign of things to come and the sort of balance and design philosophy. But if they were going to silver bullet, I think that this is a little bit too, like you said, binary of one. And I do agree that a card like Crash Space, if not even just Crash Space itself, just redesigned a little bit, would be a lot preferable. A lot more preferable.
Yeah. And so Crash Space, you tag the runner and then you trash the Crash Space, right? And you're not going to get them this turn, but maybe you can get them later on. The problem with Plascrete is the only way to get rid of it is to spend your entire combo getting rid of it. I think that's an underrated problem with it.
Yeah, Plascrete.
They're not going to use their counters on Plascrete unless they would die otherwise.
Right. Plascrete, I mean, you like the only way to get through it is you have to just nuke your way through it.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that kind of covers it. This card was everywhere for a very long time.
Yep.
And yeah. How do we feel about the flavor? I like the art on this. This is some badass art.
Yeah, I like the art.
Where is the Plascrete carapace on this lady, though?
I guess it's like the ski pads she's wearing, or the skater pads she's wearing, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one thing that bugs me looking at this is that don't look like she's wearing a Plascrete anything. Looks like she's wearing.
I prefer. I like this art, but I think I prefer the promo art.
Oh yeah, the promo art definitely. The promo art is pretty badass. The promo art looks like some crazy Metal Gear Rising kind of shit.
Oh yeah.
Cool cyber sword that this lady has though. She's got like a sword that looks like it's like made out of RAM or something. Pretty badass.
I do like her cyber sword. I don't know what's up with it, but I want one. Why wasn't that a card? Where's my RAM sword?
Pip-Boy, sick. RAM sword, sick.
Honestly, if there's a legitimate complaint to level at Netrunner, not enough Street Samurais.
Oh yeah, for sure. But anyway,
it's just Street Samurais, the plural. I'm sure some nerd is gonna at me in the comments if I don't correct that.
Anyway, point is, the one thing I don't like about this art is that she does not appear in any capacity to be wearing the titular Plascrete carapace. So
right. This feels like there was some miscommunication between product and the artist for what exactly they wanted.
I feel like this is probably just some art they had.
Yeah, maybe just some early concept stuff, and they just threw it in there because Oh, yeah, she's got some pads. It's Plascrete.
Yeah, Plascrete Carapace. Print it. Anyway, what do we rate Plascrete Carapace?
Plascrete Carapace is gonna be a. Hmm. All right, controversy time. It's gonna be a 2 from me.
So
I feel like it's not. I feel like it is not solving the problem it was intended to solve in the right way, and it's
yeah,
doing worse than cards that already existed. So they should have known better.
yeah. So I am not going to give it a 2. I'm going to give it a 3. To kind of put it at a 5, which I think is kind of where it deserves to be.
Yeah, I wanted to be the one that gave it a 2. I think it being at 4 would probably be too low overall.
Yeah,
But
because like this doesn't like I think like this doesn't deserve to be down with the likes of like a
decoy.
yeah stuff like that. But it's like it's it's a good card. Obviously, it
Yep.
it solved the problem that needed to be addressed.
It's also a card that was like oh, you got to put it in every deck thing, and boy, those annoy me.
Yes, agreed. So I think that 5 is the right spot for it.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. Do we have time for our 5th here?
I don't know. Do we have time to discuss a whole identity?
Oh, I think we can get through this one pretty quick.
Let's go for it.
All right. This is you, right?
Yeah, okay. So next up we have Haas Bioroid Stronger Together. It is a Haas Bioroid identity, shocker there, with the subtype of Megacorp. It has a deck size of 45, influence of 15, and it reads, all Bioroid ice has +1 strength. All right, Aaron, there's one other HB identity in the game at this point, and it gives you a credit for installing things. How does this compare to that? Surely there's lots of Bioroids in your deck, right? That sounds like a lot of extra strength, which sounds like a lot of money that the runner has to pay.
It sure does sound like that, doesn't it? But in the words of the famous Batman villain Dr. Octopus from X-Men number 3, reality is often disappointing.
So tell us about the reality.
The reality is that just getting money for things that you're going to be doing all the time throughout the game, anyways, regardless of anything, is just way better than specific types of ice that you have to run a lot of to get any value out of getting +1 strength.
You don't say.
And another thing too is the problem is that Bioroid ice rather getting +1 strength sounds pretty good, but the defining characteristic of Bioroid ice is that in a lot of circumstances you just don't pay to break them or don't have to.
Right. So you give it the clicky instead.
Yes. So the thing is that the +1 strength, and I always wanted this identity to be good, and it would always kind of bug me that it wasn't good because, as we've talked about, numbers are important, and you like to see good numbers.
Yep.
And when you really look at this, like, this is some pretty damn good numbers.
Yeah. Well, +1 strength, if you've got, let's be conservative, 6 pieces of ice and rest. Like in Haas Bioroid, especially early on, many times you would have more than that.
Yeah. So you're telling me that, like, if I'm protecting R&D with 3 Bioroids, like, that means that the runner has to spend 3 more credits at minimum. Because we do know that talking about Peacock, there definitely existed some icebreakers that didn't just pay 1 credit to get +1 strength.
Totally.
So if you have 3 ice over R&D, like, just your ability existing costs 3 more credits per run for the runner to get into R&D. That seems huge. That sounds huge, right?
It does seem huge.
But it's just not. It just doesn't work out. It's just because getting free money is just better.
Because you're getting money. It's not just free money. You're being given money for doing things that are winning you the game.
Right. And the thing is that while this is more of a tax on the runner, if you kind of look at it the opposite way. You have to consider, okay, so if I'm not running ETF, how much money am I just losing? Am I just taking off the table from not being that identity?
Too much is the answer.
Like just conservatively, right? You can just like at least like 8 credits, like minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if a game goes 8 turns, which I feel like is
very normal.
Yeah, is normal, perhaps even on the lower end of the spectrum. If a game goes on 8 turns, you're losing 8 credits. That's a lot of money.
That's like an agenda. That's scoring an agenda.
That's better than an extra hedge fund.
Yeah.
It's in fact 2 hedge funds.
I would take 2 more hedge funds in a deck, I'll be honest.
Yeah, if
I don't have to spend clicks on them.
Right. If the ETF, now granted, you have to consider too that, hedge funds are all at once. It's burst economy, when ETF is, just built in drip economy. But here's the thing is if you even just told me that I got the effect of a pad campaign for 8 turns for free, I would still take that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just the problem is that ETF is too good. And that
it's not Stronger Together's fault per se, though I think there were maybe better ways to handle Stronger Together.
I think in a vacuum, Stronger Together is fine. And I think in a world where ETF never exists, which, unfortunately is a world that we got, way too late.
Yeah.
I think that the +1 strength for Bioride Ice I think that's a good ability.
I would agree. But it has the aforementioned problems. No, aside from just being it's not ETF, which was its most egregious sin, Bioroid Ice can be clicked through.
Yes. So in a lot of circumstances, you may not actually see the value that you want to out of this identity. But it's just one of those things where it seems so good. I always wanted it to be so good. Keep in mind too that +1 strength when you're talking about fixed strength Anarch breakers, on paper that seems so good too, right?
Absolutely. Like suddenly, Yogg is having to contend with way bigger code gates, or at least impactfully bigger code gates.
Yeah, like if you're looking at it from that lens, that's way more impactful, than a credit tax. Like you're telling me that, that's +1, data sucker tokens that they have to spend. That's huge, but
yeah,
again, just was never meant to be.
All right. Well, what would we change?
So I think there's maybe a few things that you could do. Like I honestly think like my kind of legitimate answer for what I would change to make Stronger Together good is just delete ETF from the timeline.
Sure.
But if we're saying that we have to change something on the card itself, and not just delete other cards.
And for now, let's say you don't modify it in that you're trying to make it better than ETF, because that's not the point.
Yeah, that's not the point, right? I do think if it just had a set number of counters that added strength to Bioroid Ice when you chose to spend them, that might be a little more fun, a little more flexible, and a little more worth looking at.
Interesting. Similar problem though, like you spend 3 of your 8 counters or whatever so that this Yanis brains somebody and they just click through it mostly.
Sure, but in those instances, right, like, you can choose when and when you don't want to spend the counter. So if you know that they have the clicks, then, don't spend them. Now, obviously, you're going to run into the situation where, of course, HB, they're just going to always run or choose to always run with clicks in hand. But I don't know, maybe you can, if your board state is strong enough to where, the runner is just having to make those runs and having to deal with it, you could catch them in a spot where rather than them clicking through it, you do actually see the kind of financial impact or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be better? Maybe not. But would it at least be more flexible and a little more fun? I think so.
I can see it.
What about you? What would you doodle Stronger Together?
I think I would take it a slightly different direction. I'm not totally happy with this idea, but something like the first time the runner uses a click to break a Bioroid subroutine, it costs an additional click each turn or something.
Yeah, I see that. I almost wonder if that might make Bioroids a little bit too crazy, though. But I don't know, maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, it's not interfering with the interaction of
Sure.
icebreakers with them. So you can still break them normally that way. But one of the strengths of bioroids commonly were that they were cheap for the corp and expensive for the runner if you were going to break them with icebreakers.
Yeah.
They were economically efficient for the corporation. So what Stronger Together is doing is weighting that equation further rather than adding leverage to like leveraging against Bioroid's weaknesses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. So, what if? Now, this is a little bit crazy. And I still don't know that it would be good. But what if it was you could include an additional copy of all Bioroid ice? That might be fun, right?
I think that might be fun. I think there are problems with it in that, now you're suddenly encouraging people to buy multiple copies of every pack that has HB ice.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. That's true. But I'm saying that might be kind of fun.
It might be kind of fun. I'll give you that.
If you can run 4 Ichis, 4 Elis, and even that just on stuff, that seems pretty sweet to me. But Stronger Together was unfortunately never meant to be because it was just dead on arrival. Because people saw this and were like, "Yeah, I'll just keep getting free money, thanks."
Yeah, pretty much.
Also, do we just want to call it out? Do we just want to say right here, right now, that Damon Stone was full of shit? He never had a fucking secret Stronger Together deck that nobody figured out.
Yeah, agreed. That wasn't real.
We got to get him on the show so I can hot seat him on that
task.
Yep.
Just do the airing of grievances with Damon Stone.
Yeah, just be like, I'm here to just call you out for 45 minutes. That your secret Stronger Together deck is bullshit.
You can't dance your way out of this one, Stone.
Yeah, you're not. Your moves aren't going to be enough to get you out of this hot water. Flavor, a different breed of machine is the slogan for this one.
Corpo tagline.
Yeah, I do think it's pretty cool. And I don't like the light version of the HB logo that this one has better than the OG HB.
Agreed. It's like too, I don't know, new age floaty. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like the classic, just dark purple and metal.
Yes.
On the OG.
Just relax. It's not metal enough.
Yeah. It's far too light. Not enough metal. All right. Well, what do we rate Stronger Together?
What do we rate Stronger Together? 3. I guess 3. It's inoffensive. It's not awful. Its main problem was that a different card existed.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3 too. Might seem kind of crazy. Given that I would like to just go on record, by the way, to clarify for the listeners that nobody ever fucking played this shit.
No. It was DOA.
Yeah, like this. There was never a competitive Stronger Together deck. I'm confident in saying
it was fake news.
However, I think that Stronger Together got hemmed up on some bullshit, and I don't think it ever got a fair shake. Because I would
agree with that too.
Yeah, because ETF was around, and I just don't think it was fair. I don't think it was fair. What happened to Stronger Together? Not fair.
Yeah, agreed.
And so it gets 3.
We never got the Wizard treatment where suddenly the circumstances of the game changed such that it was a sleeper hit, and suddenly Wizard is cooler than Noise. Nope.
Yeah,
never happened.
Never happened, because by the time that they finally deleted ETF like they deleted Noise, spoilers, better HB identities than Stronger Together came about.
Yeah.
So the problem just simply was not solved in time for Stronger Together to ever get its moment in the sun. And I think that's bullshit.
Tragic.
So it gets a 3. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this latest entry in Archived Memories. And thank you so much, Isaac, for taking the time to discuss these cards with me yet again.
I would like to thank our listeners as well for not leaving me alone in a room with you. It's scary in here.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, there's that whole court case, where can't do that. So, but thank the listeners anyway.
I will. Thank you.
Goodbye.